Hello, YouTubers. Joe here of Joe and Paul on March 2nd, Saturday at 6:40 in the evening. Now, on the 28th of February, which was Thursday, I uploaded a video detailing my angst and despair and well, not despair, uh, upset at our church canceling the Easter Vigil, and this resulted in a series of various email exchanges between a member of our congregation, my son, my rector, and then various copyings back and forth or forwardings, which I find very confusing, and I still don't know how to really, because they seem to get shifted to another spot. So that's neither here nor there, but that's added to the time and confusion on my part anyway. The simplest way to cover this story is to just sort of cover the story as Hunter Thompson used to say. My rector emailed me back on Friday, so the next day, but at 3:30 in the afternoon. And he said he basically agreed with everything my son and I had been saying, and which I thought was, well, if you watch the 28th of February video, you'll know what Thomas and I were saying. He says it's an important service in the church calendar. He disagrees about it being the most important, which I'm very surprised at. He says he grew up when Vatican II was being implemented and there were other things on people's minds. Now, notice he doesn't specifically say whether there was a service called an Easter Vigil prior to Vatican II. He just says that, well, he goes on to say, I cannot remember our parish ever doing it. Okay. But to me, Maundy Thursday, he says, is the most meaningful and important service. Well, that's interesting, because he really certainly treats it that way and has done since he's been here for the last, well, now coming up on starting into the sixth time he's been doing it. And on Good Friday, he says, I struggle with interjection all day long. Well, who doesn't? Quasi-good former Catholic that I am, and after those days I long for Easter. Well, yes, that's certainly, nobody's going to, disagree with that, I don't think. Now, when my son talked to me, and I guess forwarded, or in the series of chain forwardings, which I don't understand, my son used the adjective lame, which, well, lame, it's one of those generational adjectives, isn't it? Now, I'm 61, my rector is, well, I thought he was around 49, turns out he's 47, and my son is, well, he's 37 and a half, but I'm like the insurance companies, I go up the next year, he's 38 as far as I'm concerned. Now, I don't take away any sort of negative, hostile connotation to that adjective. Apparently, the rector did. I don't think Thomas meant it hostilely. It's very interesting, to use a counter-generational example, as in it's like somebody's a tool. Oh, he's a tool. Well, that was not part of my growing up. Now, I heard my son use it, and I've tended to adopt it, I guess, in my own sui generis way. Oh, that's kind of redundant, in it? Own sui generis. So-and-so's a tool. Okay. Well, yes, I do mean that in not a hostile way, but in a somewhat denigrative way. Well, anyway, perhaps this is a generational thing, but more of that anon. Um, anyway, I take issue with, well, I almost take issue, he says, on the lameness label Thomas mentioned, since it was aimed his way. Well, it wasn't really aimed his way. It was aimed at the fact that we weren't having a vigil. And then he talks about, then he expands on the use of lame. Well, what really should be called lame is da-da-da. And it follows. People miss the point of what the vigil symbolizes. They stay away. He thinks it's lame that people who spend a lot of time working on it, I guess, don't get validation for their efforts by having a crowd show up. Now, I'm greatly simplifying, but I think that's in essence what he was saying. They feel that people are rejecting their ministry. I don't think that's why people do it. I don't think people do this kind of work to engage in a liturgy and having a service, and you do a service to worship God. You don't do a service to have a good turnout. This isn't like selling tickets to a concert. This isn't like something going down the Nationwide Arena in Columbus and oh well, there were some empty seats. No, this isn't how it works. Then, of course, he gets into actually, he talks about, people shouldn't feel demoralized. Well, I imagine when the Christians in the 200s, during the Roman Empire were being flayed alive out in the arena, I imagine some of them were verging on being demoralized, and I imagine they had a pretty good crowd turnout for that. So just food for thought. Okay, then he talks about being custodian of the liturgy and his obligations toward it, and that's very true. What's interesting is that one of the selling points when he came to us was that when he was in seminary, he had sort of specialized in liturgy and been the sacristan and planned liturgies and so forth, and which that's wonderful. I mean, that to me was a very positive point in his coming, and now he's saying, well, he's feeling somewhat adrift, I think, and he's feeling becalmed. I mean, I think the wind that was behind him initially, or he felt the wind, and there was, I mean, there, as far as I know, there's no lack of support for this man. I mean, he's a wonderful rector. He's a wonderful rector, and he says, I've been present at way too many masses. I wish he wouldn't call the Holy Communion a mass. This is a Protestant church. This is not a Roman Catholic church. It's not a mass. It's a Holy Communion, in which the liturgy almost suffocated under indifference, lack of deference, and a sense of burden. No joy there. Is a lame Easter Vigil better than no Easter Vigil? I cannot think so. Well, I respectfully disagree. Yes, having a service is better than having no service. Now, I'm saying that in all respect for his, he's the guy running the show. He's the guy making the decisions. It's like, did you cross-clamp the aorta? Did you not cross-clamp the aorta? Did you give the mannitol? Did you give the Lasix? Did you not do that? Did you digitalize the guy? I mean, I've been in a line of work where you make, really, really important and occasionally irrevocable decisions. So I appreciate his desire to, I appreciate the decision-making process this man has undergone. So he made a decision, and then he was worried about it, and then he talked about the John Chrysostom thing about 2 or 3 people. Then, of course, he gets into the thing about, where is the parish in our life? Well, I've been going there since 1995, and before that, I had not attended church regularly since I was a teenager. Uh, I went back in 1995 for a variety of reasons. One, I felt intensely the need to have a corporate experience of the worship of God in a way that I had not had before. And plus, I had time to do it. I had time to do it right. Not, oh, gosh, can I go to church this week? Oh, well, I'll have to think. No, I can go to church every week now. Every week. So he talks about a service that we called Feast of Lights. Now, I can't speak intelligently about that because I never went to it. And, of course, he then brings up the point, well, this year nobody wanted to come to it, so we didn't have it. Okay, I can't address that issue. Okay, so I then responded to him by saying, thank you for your extended reply. Now, it took me a while to write this, obviously. You're not going to whip something out, are you? I had remarked on the thing about Vatican II, and I said, I had said, I didn't realize. I said I had no idea that the Roman Catholic Vigil service was instituted after Vatican II. My assumption was based on accounts of the medieval English Church. I'm really big on church history, and particularly English church history. Doing what amounted to extended reenactments next to a special area of the chancel that served almost like a pseudo-tomb. They'd have off, and it was generally off to the, as you faced the east wall, it was generally off to the north side. And while I appreciated the more modern times would modify things a bit, I assumed the Roman Catholic Church had maintained this liturgy in some form up to the late 1960s. A lot of my friends in high school, I didn't have many, but a lot of them were Roman Catholic. And, we love to talk about religion and theology and various practices and beliefs and, the logistics of how you do services. That's just what we talked about. We didn't talk about sports much. We talked about schoolwork some. We didn't talk about who was, passing a note to whoever in study hall. That wasn't what we did. They loathe the changes introduced by Vatican II. And over time, they eventually, when they got old enough where they, could stop going, they stopped going. My ex-wife is a former Episcopalian, but she turned Roman Catholic. She was sort of like Henry IV of France, Henry of Navarre, if you will, who became Henry IV of France, who had fought on the Protestant side in the French Wars of Religion, and owing to the fact that once he captured Paris, the Prizoi were proving somewhat intractable, he converted to being Roman Catholic, and he said Paris is worth a mass. So I think my ex-wife thought that my son getting reduced tuition at the parochial schools he was going to, reduced tuition was worth a mass on her part. So that's what she did, and of course he did too. Well, anyway, that's what he did. Well, she seems to think that Vatican II was a watershed in world history, and that it freed up everybody, in the Roman Catholic Church not to have to believe the Pope, and it's just, we're going into the brave new world of not having to believe the Pope. Well, I don't believe the Pope because I'm a Protestant. But if you sign up for religion, follow the rules. During the times I've gone to Roman Catholic services, I haven't tried to sneak communion. You know, I mean, I respect them. You know, I obey their rules. You know, I think it's kind of an odious way to treat fellow Christians, but I respect their rules. You know, I'm a visitor. I'm a guest. And so I told him about don't attach much significance to the word lame. I covered that. And here this is finally, after almost 15 and a half minutes, the meat of this message. In regards to the declining voter turnout at services in the U.S. Episcopal Church. In the little discussion session you held after the most recent solipsistic love fest known as General Convention in Indianapolis in 2012, the point was raised that the packed churches of other denominations, that we have in our area city, and they're packed. I mean, you go by, the parking lots are just absolutely packed full. But generally on the sign out front, it says something like such and such Christian church, or such and such Church of God, or such and such, These are churches that proclaim they were a Christian church, and not the church of, and now I'm going to say, insert your favorite socio-sexual diversity category here. The church of the transgender, the church of the lesbian, the LBGT community. No, that's fine. Have everybody come. Absolutely have everybody come. That's what it's all about. But, don't make a point of talking about it, because that's not what the point is. The point is Jesus Christ and God and the Holy Ghost. That's the point. You and I have discussed that I find the national U.S. church coming across as Looney Tune. No, it is. It thinks itself very principled, but it's Looney Tune. I believe the underlying reason that a large part, that people think it's Looney Tune is a large part of the hierarchy of the U.S. Episcopal Church doesn't really believe in the truth of Jesus Christ, either in his divinity, or his incarnation, or his resurrection, and that he constitutes the only doorway to salvation. I know that's going to open a huge can of worms among some of the more secular audiences out there in this medium, but nonetheless, there it is. The only doorway, no matter how decent, kind, good, and helpful a human being is. Now, I understand that in one of the more recent General Convention love fests, and it was either in 2003, 2006, or 2009, the U.S. U.S. Episcopal Church General Convention defeated. Now, this is a resolution in a Christian church, presumably. Defeated a resolution that said that Jesus Christ was Lord and Savior and indispensable to salvation. Well, apparently that was just too hard a nut for some of these folks to swallow. Now, see, the General Convention is composed of, it's composed of the bishops. All the bishops. It's composed of representatives of the clergy from each diocese. And it's composed of representatives of the laity from each diocese. And, the bishops are in their own house, and the laity and the clergy are combined into one house. The clergy obviously are professional Episcopalians, but the laity also are. I've met a number of these individuals, and they're very good, kind, decent people, and for the most part they believe. But they're not willing to carry their belief through to its logical conclusion, which leads me to think that maybe they don't really believe. But more to the point, they're professional Episcopalians. I mean, they're not getting paid for this, but they derive a lot of secondary gain by being involved in this. They're saying they say they're doing it for the good of the church, and I'm sure a lot of them are. But there's also a lot of them that are, doing it because it really makes them feel good. Well, we all like to feel good, don't we? Yes, we do. I said, until the U.S. Episcopal Church as a whole addresses the fundamental problem that many outsiders, heck, many insiders, have the attitude that this is a church that does not believe in the truth of its own propositions, the attendance will continue to dwindle. The local public sees our church as an Episcopal church. And for all the good PR, our rector does, and he does, he really has gone out of his way to publicize the place, tell what's going on, get the press to come up and see stuff and so forth. The albatross of the national church swoops large and casts its shadow. And I said, you, of course, must be a faithful custodian of the liturgy that God gives you the light to do as what you see right. He's not something to do something like this that's disruptive as this without prayer and thought. I said the Feast of Lights, I didn't attend it. Okay, I talked about that. Then I sort of quibbled a little bit about the word vigil. He was talking about starting one at 5 in the morning, and I said a vigil by definition is at night. It really, has to start at night, not at 5 in the morning. Anyway, so he did clarify that a little bit. So he did reply, and now to move right along, he was talking about he had problems with Saturday services in general. They started doing this Saturday service stuff. People are tied up on Sunday. We'll do a Saturday service. And he said he had a problem with that. And I said I always had a problem with that. So we're in agreement there. The word vigil, he says it has to be held after dark. There's a certain amount of, hair splitting, hair cutting. But he did make a good point about the U.S. Episcopal Church hierarchy. He says funerals solve a lot of problems. That's not advocating, going out and offing the hierarchy. He's just saying that in time they're going to retire, or they're going to die off, and that will leave people like himself who believes, and he does believe. He's a believer. He's not one of these guys that doesn't believe. He believes. He believes. That's one of the wonderful things about him. He actually believes in the truth of all this, and so. It's we'll just have to see what happens now. I have a feeling he's going to get a fair amount of grief about this tomorrow, at least initially. But I've had my say. He's had his say. A lot of mutual respect. I told him I'm one of the most loyal so-and-sos out there on the mountain. That's one of my good points and probably one of my worst points. If I hitch my wagon to the wrong wrong individual. So there it stands. I clearly don't think we're going to have the service this year. So there it is. In other news, my buddy Mike brought over a jacket and a hat from a seed company, which is always kind of fun and fits very nicely, very nicely done, very wonderful. Many thanks. So I'm going to hang up here now, and obviously there might be more of this anon, but you know, uh, we've had toing and froing to the point of you know, everybody having their say and making their positions known, and not in a hostile way. So, alrighty now, bye bye.